Welcome to the SCS Happy Hour. I'm Scout, joined by Alec Nederveld and Lucas Hill. We're here to talk about the national championship game where the Ohio State Buckeyes beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and a little bit of NFL as well. So, boys, let's get it started. Let's get it rolling. I know it was a very snowy day for me and Lucas, and not so snowy for the man in Syracuse, New York. But Lucas, so how has your time in Louisiana been with all the snow, and just how's your day been?
Dude, 10 inches of snow. How about that? I mean,
Yeah.
been a little fun. Made a little mini snowman, threw some snowballs around, but I've been inside since about 2 o'clock, and I was like, forget all the snow. Forget being outside of that. So just been hanging out, and excited to talk some ball, brother.
And Alec, I know that you were on the latest episode as well, but how the last 48 hours been? What were we'll go into thoughts about the national championship, but I know that you were watching the Bills game. How was that and the rest of your week?
Man, I was really stressing over that Bills game. I thought the Ravens were the perfect matchup to stop us, and there's just for Allen's reputation, there's just a lot on the line, and really for me not having to hear. One of my better friends is a really big Baltimore fan, so I know he'd be talking for forever if the Ravens won, but hey, luckily the defense did enough, and we're in a spot where we get to go back to Arrowhead and play the Chiefs again. So just so excited we get the Chiefs and Arrowhead, but just happy to be here.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk more about that at the very end, but let's start out with some national championship talk. Okay, so Ohio State won. I was wrong on my pick because I thought that Notre Dame would cover, and I believe from the actual spread, now like the live spread at halftime, they did cover, but from like the initial spread, they didn't, even though it was only a 7-point game. But um, with all of that, so Ohio State, they ended up beating the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Quinshot Judkins had a hell of a game. Will Howard had a hell of a game. I'll let one of them dive into that as well. But Lucas, what were your thoughts on the national championship game? I know that you're watching it pretty closely. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the first things I said yesterday when I went live was just how fast Ohio State is and how hard it is to play from behind. I mean, when Notre Dame got down 31-7, a lot of people thought this football game was over. And look, it started off like we were going to get a battle. I mean, why wouldn't you think that when Notre Dame goes on a 17 or 18 play drive, takes off almost 10 minutes off the clock and puts up 7? But after that, you could just tell the gas tank was already empty by the time by the time that drive ended. And Ohio State took advantage of that. I mean, the defense was cold getting out onto the field against that elite Ohio State offense, which arguably has been probably the most dominant team in the college football playoff thus far. I know you weren't expecting the offensive fire show that you got from the first 2 games that Ohio State got. You were kind of expecting the dogfight, and you kind of got that throughout the start of the third to the middle of the fourth quarter. But it was all about who made the big play at the end of the day. A late, furious comeback. The defense buckles down in the red zone. You still got to think about that fourth down call inside the red zone and what was going through Marcus Freeman's head at that moment to try and send out an inconsistent special teamer to try and still make this a 2-possession game instead of dropping them and trying to make this a 1-possession game and trusting your offense. But I think it all just goes down to how this team was performing. And overall, I just don't think that Marcus Freeman had the trust of this Notre Dame offense and how they were able to methodically move down the field after that first initial drive. It was kind of a stalemate. And look, we're lucky that Ohio State didn't become the Falcons of this year, but hell of an effort from that offense. Will Howard yet again coming out aggressive, throwing the football, starting off 15 of 15, and basically took over that football game like we expected. Watched the film earlier today. He deserves the MVP. I think that Quinshot Judkins is a close second. But man, I mean, you can't deny what Will Howard has done the last 2 games. How what happened last week and how aggressive he was, despite not really targeting Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith much. And then you come out this game, you get your playmakers involved, and they make a huge impact for your first title since 14.
Yeah. And I will say one thing too. Shout out Quinshon Judkins, shout out Will Howard. The state of Alabama, they ended up having, let me make sure. So 2 touchdowns from Quinshon Judkins, 2 passing touchdowns from Riley Leonard, and 1 rushing touchdown from Riley Leonard. So the state of Alabama, even when we're not in the national championship game, 5 total touchdowns contributed to, compared to the what is this? Uh, yeah, so 2 from other states, being the 2 passing touchdowns from Will Howard. So that's my one thing, since we got all of us to know and y'all got to play the national championship game, right? But anyways, and I'll just say one more thing going in on what you're saying about Quinshon Judkins. That might have been one of the most dominant performances a running back has had in a national championship game. He ended up having 11 carries, 100 yards on a 9.1 average and 2 touchdowns. Shout out the kid from Pike Road. But yeah, and that obviously that long 70-yard rush, it really makes the stats look a lot better. But even then, like there was several times where he was getting 5 or 6 yards when all they needed was 5 or 6 yards, right? And I will say one thing too to shout out Jayden Greathouse. He went into halftime with I think a 5-yard reception. He ends the game with 6 receptions for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was a guy that before last week, unless if you were like a really deep dive guy on the Notre Dame roster, you might have not known him, or you might have not like just like been able to pick him out as like, oh, this is gonna be the X factor. But in the playoffs, if there was a playoff MVP, I think you would have to give it to him with how he played in the Orange Bowl and how he played in the national championship game. But yeah, but
No.
Alec, what are your thoughts on the national championship game? And then we'll move on to the NFC championship.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple to me. This Ohio State roster is the best we've seen in since probably the 2019 LSU team. They are just so good and everywhere, and it's kind of crazy to me to think about if we don't have a 12-team playoff this year. This team is playing in the I don't know, either the Rose Bowl or they're playing in like the Fiesta Bowl this year, and probably blowing somebody out, assuming everybody plays. That's how good this team is, and they didn't put everything together at first. They lose that game to Oregon, where Oregon's a very good team. No shame on losing on the road to Oregon and whatever happened in Michigan. But no, this team they rallied through everything. They completely dominated in the playoffs, and yeah, this offense just showed there's so many weapons. You can't stop them all. Emeka Egbuka and Cornell Tate, those are the second and third wide receivers for Ohio State. They would be wide receiver 1 on most of the country. Quinshon Judkins, I'd say, is the RB2 for Ohio State. He'd be an RB1 for all but 5 to 10 teams in the country. That's just how good they are. And these guys are change of pace backup guys. That's genuinely insane. Ohio State, they've leveraged the transfer portal better than I think any other team has so far. They have built their roster around recruiting, and Ryan Day has recruited a lot of very good players, and they've supplemented with the portal for guys like Caleb Downs, obviously Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, Seth McLaughlin. A lot of guys just to make this team, to help out at the top. And really, Ohio State's not winning a national championship if they don't have a mix of Will Howard and Caleb Downs and all these great players. So it's just great roster construction from Ryan Day. They call it the $20 million roster, and the $20 million roster won a national championship.
Yeah, and I will say one thing as they just saw me look up, because I could not remember his last name. I apologize, Jake. But Jake Crane, he had talked about how Ryan Day, like Ohio State fans, they wanted to put Ryan Day on a stake like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, like right before the Tennessee game. Like there was people at the home Tennessee game who were like, "Oh, if we lose this game, guess what? That means that we get rid of Ryan Day." And we're now a month away from that. And what's the pulse there, right? It's definitely not that, because now like if this guy's prospects go, like imagine, let's say the New York Jets give him a call. Like is he going to go with the Jets or the people that all of a sudden wanted to cut him loose whenever he couldn't win one game, right? So it's definitely interesting. I think this is something we'll be talking about Ohio State definitely a couple weeks, couple months, whenever we start talking about spring ball, and then that could be a really interesting team for the future as well. But yeah, and then so moving forward, we have the NFC Championship game. And with the NFC Championship game, this is a very interesting one for me. The Philadelphia Eagles are playing the Washington Commanders, aka the Commies, that some people might say. And the Eagles, they looked unstoppable until the Rams, and I had said multiple times, I know we don't really talk about the NFL on here, but I've said multiple times that the Rams are hot, right? The Rams might have been the hottest team at the time, because like unlike the Bengals who hadn't really won, they were winning when they were injured, and then all of a sudden they had Puka and Cooper Kupp finally at the same time, and their defense got really good at the right time. And if it wasn't for the snow, I think like Mother Nature saved the Eagles, honestly. Because whenever it snows, it's harder to throw the ball, it's harder to get a pass game going. The refs are being a little bit more lenient when it comes to, like bumping and coverage and stuff like that. So you can get away with more and defense. But the Eagles run for this, like I thought that the Rams were actually going to pull something, and this was very similar to the national championship game.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to.
It came down to a final little thing, right? And then with all of that, I just thought that the Rams were going to end up winning. But hey, the Eagles held strong. The very Bama and Georgia dominated Eagles defense held very strong. Shout out Jalen Carter. Shout out all the other guys. Nolan Smith has had a hell of a season. But yeah, and then on the Washington side, they were kind of right where the Rams were. They were a very hot team going into a dominant arena, and the Lions just weren't ready. I don't know if Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson were just a little bit more, a little bit more, hey, I'm already out of here. I don't think this is a championship team or something. Like, I don't know if that was, I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but I don't know if people were checked out, but it was definitely a game where Washington put up 45 and nobody expected to put up 20. So yeah, so Alec, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the NFC Championship game?
Yeah, I think first off, you touched on this a little bit. It's such a great story for the Commanders to even be in this game. I really was not high on Dan Quinn and a lot of the free agency acquisitions like Bobby Wagner in the year 2024, but
Yeah.
Bobby Wagner proved he is still one of the better linebackers, one of the best linebackers in this league. And I obviously when you look at divisional teams playing in the playoffs, you always look at the two previous regular season games. Team split. However, there are a couple asterisks you could say. Jalen Hurts was injured the second time the two teams played. He was injured in the middle of the game. The Eagles did go up. I think they went up 2 scores pretty early, and once Jalen Hurts was out, just completely changed the way the game was played. And I want to say Jayden Daniels was not 100% the first time these two teams played. So this is the first time you're going to get both these guys healthy. I know Washington, they've had some injuries as well with De'Ami Brown, for example, and in this game they're going to be without Cosme, probably their best offensive lineman. So if I'm looking at this though, I do think the Eagles, they are just the better team right here. And they have already seen the Cliff Kingsbury system, which it has been proven to be pretty difficult to stop. There's a lot of RPOs, there's a lot of options and stuff like that to deal with. I think that having 2 times to prepare for it already, I think that the Eagles are going to take care of this one at home.
Yeah, and I will say one thing as well is the Cliff Kingsbury system, the Joe Brady system that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. But this is like in college football, we're almost regressing to where the run game's more important and all this other stuff's more important. But now in the pro game, where a few years ago we thought, oh, Cliff Kingsbury was a bust in Arizona, but it's like we're starting to figure out that if you get like the right amount of defense and the right amount of offense, like that Dan Quinn defense with that Cliff Kingsbury offense, it's going to make something insane, right? Jayden Daniels should be your offensive rookie of the year, right? And they have a defense that has some guys like B-Wags, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, B-Wags is washed, whatever. But like this is a very good team on that side of the ball. And yeah, and just before we go into like predictions, I'll let Mr. Lucas give his thoughts on the NFC Championship game.
So I'm kind of stunned with Washington's run. I knew that they were going to get past the Buccaneers. I didn't think that Tampa had the depth, and I didn't think that they were going to be able to stop that Cliff Kingsbury offense. I love Tampa at the end of the day, but it was all about who. I didn't think the game would have ended that way, I think we all knew that this is just going to be the start of the Jayden Daniels legacy. Okay, and what he did last week, what that defense did last week. Nobody's really talking about this Joe Witt defense. You forced 5 turnovers on this Detroit Lions offense that was supposed to be one of, if not the most dominant offense in the NFL with what you have, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Jared Goff. You had 4 interceptions in that game. And you forced a fumble. One of them got returned for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And look, I love what Jayden Daniels did. His defense gave him the right place. In order for Washington to win this game, though, you have to limit the turnovers. The Eagles have 6 combined in the first 2. They're 6th in the NFL in turnover differential. And if you want to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage against this Eagles front, you're going to have to get your young dudes to step up. Brandon Coleman, 4th-round draft pick, going to have to step, or 3rd-round draft pick from TCU. Had a pretty decent game last week against Detroit. Only gave up 1 quarterback hurry out of 37 pass blocking snaps. Very physical at the point of attack, especially on run blocking. You're going to have to rely on him outside, going up against guys like Nolan Smith, against Zach Bond, against the blitzes that you know that the Eagles are very well known for. And so I'm sure we'll get into predictions later, but this is just too even for me, to be honest with you. I just have a strong feeling that this one, despite what the weather's going to be out in Philly, I just have a good feeling that whatever the total point spread is, it's going to go over. If it's 44.5, I can guarantee you it's going to go over. This could end up being a 31-27 ball game at the end of the day, with just how these 2 offenses are. I think both defenses are going to struggle a good bit. I could be wrong, though, but whoever wins the turnover battle is going to win the football game at the end of this day. I am really excited for this one. This is going to be probably the most underrated game of the entire weekend. Everybody's going to focus on Mahomes and Allen. Nobody's really talking about this young upstart Commanders team that literally last year was 4-12, did nothing all season long. You bring in a brand new owner that has to take over, and Josh Harris, who had to take over a tumultuous Dan Snyder era. And in 2 years, he's already led this team to the NFC title. All of this goes back to what he did. Adam Peters as a GM had a hell of an offseason. Dan Quinn is probably going to be your NFL Coach of the Year. Make no mistake about it with what he's been able to do. This just seems too close to call for me, but I'm really excited for a potential high-scoring matchup out in Philly.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and talk about what my prediction would be for this game. I really think, and I'll pull up the lines while I start talking here, but I really think that it's a very good matchup for the Commanders. I think that the hot team wins in these types of matchups. I do think that Saquon Barkley has just been an absolute unit the past few years. Or not a few years, past few weeks. But my one issue with the Eagles offense is they can't seem to get A.J. Brown in a natural rhythm. They either force feed him the whole time or they just can't use him a lot. So honestly, so I'm looking at this. You got the Eagles -6, or you got Commanders at the money line +336. And the Commanders money line, that doesn't look too bad. 236 for winning that, +236, that is.
And And let me just add this real fast as well, Scout. If you can put A.J. Brown on an island and if you can shut him down, limit him to maybe 3 or 4 catches, and force Jalen Milroe to utilize his other weapons and try to use his feet, I have a strong confidence in what the Commanders' defense can do against them. Let's go on and let's move on.
Yeah.
Love the Jalen Hurts this by calling him Jalen Milroe. See what you did there.
Yeah. But Lucas,
My bad. I pulled a Biden.
What's your official prediction, Lucas?
Yeah, give me the Commanders in this one. I think that the Jayden Daniels legacy begins here. I think that this is a run that is quite similar to what the Bengals pulled in 2021. I think that with everything that has gone on for the Commanders, I think they do advance to the Super Bowl. I think that with how high-powered this offense can be, and I think with trying to defend a Cliff Kingsbury offense is going to be very difficult. If you can win the line of scrimmage, you have the opportunity to win that, and I think you do at the end of the day. Give me the Commanders winning this one against Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and then Alec, what are your takes on this?
I think I'm gonna have to ride out with the Eagles. I think at the end of the day, I know Jayden Daniels is not going to be scared of any environment, but I don't know what the rest of this team is going to do playing in a cold Lincoln Financial Field. This place is going to be bumping. You're going to hear all kinds of things towards Commanders fans, players, and whoever else in that stadium. I just think when it gets down to it's going to be close. When it gets down to the wire, this Eagles team has made a lot of clutch plays throughout the season. They made a clutch play last week. They almost choked, but they ended up getting that 4th down stop to seal the win. I think it's going to be a close game. Somebody's going to either go down and get a game-winning touchdown or get a game-winning stop. And I think it's going to be the Eagles getting on top because of that.
Yeah, and so we have 2 Commanders and 1 Eagles for this. And yeah, so now we'll move on to what Alec's been waiting patiently for 22 minutes for, the AFC Championship game. So it's the same thing, right? We've had this game. This is the 4th time we've had it in the playoffs, right? The sad part is that in the regular season, Josh Allen against Pat Mahomes, 3-1. In the postseason, 0-3. So he has a chance to finally, overcome that hurdle, finally make a Super Bowl, finally get past that hump. And Patrick Mahomes, if he wins, and honestly, like this is one of those things where and I think I probably would have said the last year, the same thing last year. But I think Pat Mahomes doesn't have anything to lose here. But then Josh Allen, like you start thinking about how long is it going to take him to make a Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl. And the Buffalo Bills way practically was, in the 90s they made the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. They lost it all. Now this would be the 4th time losing in just the AFC Championship game. So yeah. So Alec, I'll go back to you to open on this since you are a Bills fan. But yes, sir.
Yeah, just to correct you, we've only made the AFC Championship game twice. Every other loss was to the divisional round against the Chiefs. But
Okay.
yeah, the thing with the Chiefs this year has been, if it's a close game, the Chiefs are going to win it. It feels like it always does come down to the wire, and they make a play at the end. That is what makes them so good. They've got that mentality that when it's going to be close, we are going to make that play. Same thing that I was just talking about with the Eagles. That's what the Chiefs' MO has been all season with, the blocked field goal. They've had Harrison Butker's made a couple game-winning field goals himself. They just stick around in these games, and almost in a way like Iowa does. The Iowa Hawkeyes, they make the other guys make a mistake. Some people might say it's devil witchcraft. Some people might say the NFL's rigging it for them. I wouldn't say it's any of that. To be honest, they are just a team that's been in this spot. They have the best coach in the NFL, one of the best coaches in NFL history. They end up making those plays when it matter. And that's something that the Bills have to look at it like they were the only team that really made that game-winning play against the Chiefs. Allen had the 4th and 2 scramble for, I think it was 27 yards, gets into the end zone. They take a 10-point lead with maybe 2 minutes left. It was a dagger for the game. this game is going to be close. Every single time the Bills and the Chiefs play since the 2020 AFC Championship game, it has been close. It's been one score for one team or another. Obviously, you got the 13 seconds left game and Chiefs winning in overtime. You have last year's game where Tyler Bass missed a field goal that could have tied it with less than 2 minutes left. It's just been the Bills have been in this spot every single time, and the Bills have won in the regular season every single time as well. Just the Chiefs, they're coming out on top. So how do the Bills stop it? I think the Bills, they need to get more out of their defensive line. Von Miller, I think he is well past his prime, especially for what he's making, but he's going to have to step up. He's played better this year than some of his other years with Buffalo. He's going to have to step up. Ed Oliver, he's a great player during the regular season. He's making a lot of money because of that, but he has not had the playoff performances needed. Greg Russo, AJ Epinesa, somebody on the defensive line has to step up. Lamar Jackson had way too much time last week, and Patrick Mahomes, he is known for his playoff scrambles. I'm sure we're going to see more of that again if the defensive line just doesn't step up. And if that happens, I really like the Bills' chances. If they can, again, that is a big ask. The Chiefs' offensive line, it is not good as it was in years past. It's not better than the Ravens' offensive line, but if the Bills' defensive line can step up, if they can win that side of the field, I think they're going to win the game if they can do that. So it's going to be very tough for Buffalo, and we'll see what happens. But I'm going to have to lean with the Bills right now. I'm definitely biased, but I see this is how it just feels like it's the year, man.
Yeah. And I will say too, to my own point, is that I think I'm rocking with the Bills too, just like jumping ahead for some of the same reasons. I think that Josh Allen, it's just you got to get a legacy game out of this one, right? You got to give it all up because it's like if you go into next year with the same thing, because they have so much working for them in this go around. I know that you lost Diggs and you lost some of the other pieces, but like this overall team has looked better and they've gotten more out of them than most of the other ones. So yeah. But Lucas, what are your thoughts on the AFC Championship game?
I think the great thing about this game is that, look, this is another one that's going to get me. I think this is probably two of the best games that we've gotten in recent memory for AFC/NFC Championship games that we've had recently. Just with all the storylines involved. Once again, we get a Mahomes Allen. It's almost like Brady Belichick of the 2020s, which I think is amazing. Yeah. 11-0. Let me give you that number, ladies and gentlemen. That's the record that the Chiefs are in one-possession games. They have relied on their defense a lot this year. Offense took a step back. And what's crazy about it, too, guys, I don't think you guys even noticed this. Patrick Mahomes isn't a Pro Bowler this year. He got left out. And I don't think it really pisses him off. I mean, the guy's making $500 million. But I think what is so insane about this is that we've seen a lot more of the Chiefs' defense this year step up in big-time situations than what we've used to seeing in the offense. So does it cause some concerns for me? Kind of, especially with how they performed against Houston. That was honestly that was pretty much an ugly game to me, to be honest with you. I just didn't like how both offenses kind of played. It just looked ugly and it was boring from start to finish. Patrick Mahomes with a kind of a lackluster game. But again, who was going to make the big play at the end of the day? Travis Kelce, you got to be able to shut him down. So you can't allow for a guy to have 7 receptions and go for another 100-yard game against this Bills team that has been known to not really come up clutch in big-time situations in the postseason. And it's not just during the Josh Allen. You got to go back all the way to the 90s and the Super Bowl run that they had. It's just their inability to finish games when it matters most and play a complete game of football. This seems like the year for it. And look, we know that Kansas City's 15-2. But are they really a good 15-win team? if I'm being honest, and when I look at overall of how they played, they're dang near lucky that they aren't a wild card team. They're dang lucky that they get a big turnover against Denver and they win that football game. They're lucky they go to overtime and beat Tampa Bay. Then you had back-to-back games against the Raiders and the Chargers that both ended up in 19-17 games. And to be honest with you, they should have lost both of those games. So you're talking about maybe a 4 or 5 game differential that separates them from being a 15-2 team to maybe a 9-8 or 10-7 team. So I don't really know about what to expect with Kansas City this year. But I feel like at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes has always been the better quarterback. I feel like at the end of the day, his playoff record speaks for itself. In the postseason, Kansas City always finds a way to win the football game. Yeah. This game is at Arrowhead. The referees are going to be handpicked by Andy Reid to support this team. I think this game ends up being decided by either another overtime period or the final drive of the game. Whether it be another wide right, whether it be another memorable moment that you saw a couple of years ago in the divisional round in the 22nd drive, or something else like that, or maybe even a penalty that decides this football game.
Yeah,
the little things are going to decide this football game.
Yeah, and I will say
I just have more trust in the Chiefs, to be honest with you. I mean, I just see how Patrick Mahomes' record has been, and I just see the Chiefs being able to pull out again with another victory and head back to another Super Bowl.
Yeah, and one thing that I didn't really mention, but the Chiefs, they are 15-2 in the regular season, right? 16-2 now, if you want to count that. But 11 of their 15 regular season wins were by one score, and then several of the ones that
That's what I said.
Were more than that. Oh, if you said that verbatim, bro, I apologize. But yeah, but overall, and I will say one thing too, when you're saying that 117 that Kelsey had. So, on top of that, they had not had a 100-yard performance since week 9. I forgot who said that. Like Stephen A, I think said that or something like that. Or no, it was Mad Dog. Mad Dog had said that. But the fact that nobody had stepped up and they had won all but 2 games in that period, it's just insane. Like the evil empire exists, and it's in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas.
And look, if Steve Spagnuolo doesn't have a head coaching job,
yes,
not next year, but maybe the year after, if he doesn't have one by then, it is a crime, because this dude is arguably the best genius when it comes to head coaches in recent memory. He was the New Orleans Saints DC.
Yeah.
Imagine what the Saints could have had with him. Now, I do kind of understand why you don't want to really have him, because he only won 10 games with St. Louis during his 3-year run. But I will say, when you talk about defensive minds that are so incredible, especially when it comes to secondary-wise, Steve Spagnuolo is going to be on the top of that list.
For sure. And but yeah, also please Jaguars get a defensive coach. I know you all love the offensive guys. Anyways, but yeah. So predictions. We will go back to Alec. What are your predictions for this? I can almost guess, but
it's gonna be a close game. But yeah, I think the Bills, they have enough this year to get it done. And look, I can easily see what Lucas was describing. Another wide right, or I don't even know, man. A Hail Mary for the Chiefs. Just something ridiculous. Just because it feels like that's what would happen. But it's going to come down to who makes that play. And I'm actually going to change my mind. I think the Chiefs are going to make that play, because I just see it in my head happening. So give me the Chiefs by something like 31-30. It's going to be painful if the Bills lose. I'm going to tell you that.
I have to go with the Bills. If the Chiefs win, if the Chiefs and Buckeyes win. Don't get me started. Anyways, that would be terrible for Twitter. But yeah, so I got to go Bills here. And Lucas, what is your take on it?
Yeah, give me Chiefs in this one by at a last-second field goal, I think. I think that the defense is going to step up big for them. I think that Josh Allen recently in the postseason, just against the Chiefs too, I mean, he struggled in postseason play. He struggled on the road, being able to come up with victories. And he struggled in that type of environment. He struggled at Arrowhead.
No,
It's
no,
not. I mean, it isn't. It's
been the defense
it's
that
been
struggled.
inconsistent.
No, it's been the defense.
Hey, look, no, Alec.
What?
Josh Allen has had his bad moments in Arrowhead.
Yes.
Trust me.
The 2020 AFC Championship, that was a bad moment. I absolutely agree with you on that. The last time, the 13 seconds, that was not him.
Now, I'm not talking about 13 seconds. I'm just talking about it in general at Arrowhead, brother. I don't care about 13 seconds or whatever or whatever chaos that he went into. But I just know that at the end of the day, there's magic in Arrowhead. And for some odd reason, Josh Allen and this team will struggle to be able to come up and finish drives. They're going to struggle to put up points in the red zone like they did against Cincinnati, like they did against Kansas City last year or the year before. They're going to find a way to struggle at some point. Give me the Chiefs in this one in a tight battle.
Hey, and I will say, okay, so talking about magic in Kansas City, that Jaguars team that beat the Chargers, the fact that so many things went wrong for them when they played the Chiefs and they fumbled on like the 4-yard line. Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started with the Magic City, or not the Magic City. Shout out the Magic City. We are 68 days from Birmingham Stallions football. Anyways, but yeah. So Lucas, who was your pick?
KC.
KC, Bills, and KC. Okay. But that about wraps it up. Quick little show, quick little 36-minute show. But yeah, so just give you all a little outlook on what our next show will be. Either college basketball or we'll do a recap. Either it's going to be college basketball and we'll get it out around Friday. This episode should be coming out Wednesday, depending on when you watch it. But if it's not like on Friday college basketball, then we'll be back with a NFC Championship and AFC Championship recap. And then in that same episode, we should have a not Sun Belt, Senior Bowl, what to know, or like what you should know going into it. Basically kind of like what we were doing, but more of like a beginner's guide to the Senior Bowl. It's something that I've been trying to bounce off of, like what to expect, where to watch, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and there are like day by day, I'll say this once or like every other time. Follow Jim Nagy, follow the Senior Bowl, and follow us. But yeah, the Senior Bowl, it's getting bigger and better every single day. I know Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame signed on today. But yeah, but other than that, peace from me, and I'll let these two boys say see ya, and then we'll go.